information. It was a highly anticipated event. Basically, if you don't know what it is, the countries of the top 20 economies get together and have discussions, and it's a really interesting combination of countries such as the United States, Russia, and then you have the EU as a bloc. You have Germany, you have the UK. So the Germany is obviously a part of the EU. So let's delve into this, shall we? Basically, it says, Trump wins key climate trade concessions at stormy G20. What this article effectively goes over is that Trump won concessions and basically gave up nothing. This is what he talks about, why he doesn't like to show his cards, why he starts with extremes and things like that. Why he always wants to make the other person give up something to try to gain something that they had already won but not known that. And you'll see as I go through the different points of this article how he went about that. For instance, the U.S. left the Climate Paris Accord, and that has been recognized. So these other countries could have said, no, we're not going to recognize that. But they chose to concede that to him, that we are going to recognize it to you. And that's because they're scared of his isolationism. But Trump was never an isolationist. He's always been free market. He's never wanted to, stop trading with countries around the world. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So these leaders are so worried that Trump is going to just build this bubble, and that they're conceding things to him that they don't have to. And he's giving them absolutely nothing back. This is how you win as a country. This is how America is going to win under Trump. And here are some of the slogans that this article points out very intelligently, that through things like the U.S. working to spread cleaner fossil fuels. Trump said he wanted to do that, and they agree. Other countries agree to that at the G20. Well, what do these types of concessions do for Trump? They allow his slogan "America First" to remain intact. They allow Buy American to remain intact, and they allow Hire American to remain intact. All of these types of slogans continue because and it's really key here that the U.S. is going to work to spread cleaner fossil fuels and more efficient fossil fuels. I think a transition away from fossil fuels long term is the answer, but transitioning too early can be very detrimental, and I think it is too early right now. And transitioning away too early is going to take away a lot of middle-class jobs as well. So this is going to be a part of creating that greater middle class, which is the driving force of the economy. So then you had a bunch of riots and protests. Of course, it's Europe. And it actually disrupted Melania Trump quite a bit. There was one event she couldn't go to at all. And then there was it's the Hamburg Harbor, a tour of the Hamburg Harbor she missed completely. And the G20 organizers had to completely alter a program for spouses of visiting leaders. That's how disruptive these rioters were. Apparently 70,000 people were on the march, according to organizers, so you can understand why the police couldn't handle that many. So then you had Putin, and this gets really interesting with Putin. Apparently Trump and Putin had a really good conversation. Interestingly enough, the conversation was only scheduled to last 30 minutes. Who thought it would only last 30 minutes? The first time these two are gonna, meet and not only talk about important issues, they have to develop a relationship and feel each other out. Maybe it was only scheduled 30 minutes in case it went badly, but it went so well that Melania was sent in to get them to wrap up after only about an hour. So the meeting went twice as long, and then they send Melania in, according to Secretary of State Rex Tillerson. And that didn't work. The meeting ended up lasting 2 hours and 16 minutes, over 4 times as long as it was supposed to. That doesn't happen unless some serious stuff is getting hammered out. That doesn't happen unless they've built a workable relationship. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're falling over each other in happiness type of relationship. There are, I'm sure, plenty of issues. But it shows production. If you're not getting anywhere, you're just going to wrap it up after. Maybe you go a half hour, 45 minutes or something, maybe an hour and wrap it up, but you're not going to go 2 hours and 16 minutes, 4 times, over 4 times as long as it was scheduled to go. And then, Putin points at journalists and asks Trump, "Are these the ones hurting you?" during press conference. So there's a short little press conference, and this was absolutely hilarious. I believe this was before. Yeah, it says a photo op before the private G20 Summit meeting. And Putin says, "These are the ones hurting you?" Because reporters started, yelling questions. And Trump says, "These are the ones. You're right about that." I find it hilarious that hating on the media is how these two are developing a relationship. But of course, there's a huge difference between how Putin and Trump deal with the media. Trump actually, he calls them fake news and things like that. He tries to undermine the media, but because he says that, they're not telling the truth. And he's right about that. The media isn't telling the truth. And he's trying to, Trump's actually trying to fix the media. What Putin's doing, there are reports that he's killed reporters and stuff. And apparently almost 60 journalists have been killed in Russia since 1993. And so Putin is actually trying to control the media in the sense that he's pushing straight up propaganda. Trump isn't doing that. He's just saying, cover it how you want to cover it. Just cover it accurately. And there have been harmful media coverage of Trump from time to time that he hasn't complained about because it was accurate. And then there's, a lot of the CNN type of crap that CNN covers almost nothing accurately. It's amazing. I don't watch cable at my place, but when I'm at my brother's and stuff, I'll turn on CNN to see what they're talking about. Every time I turn it on, it's Russia. And it's all bullshit. So then you have Putin after the meeting. He said that TV Trump is very different from real Trump, and he actually makes some interesting comments here. He says Russian President Vladimir Putin declared that television Trump is very different from the real President Trump. As I see it, television Trump is very different from the real person, Putin said Saturday at a press conference. He's absolutely concrete, absolutely adequately perceives the interlocutor, quite quickly analyzes, answers questions, or draws from the discussions some new elements. I find this really interesting how Putin says this, because Putin is a very analytical person, and he's analyzing how Trump is looking at the situation and breaking it apart. I really like this part where he says that Trump answers questions or draws from the discussions some new elements. And this means that Trump listens and learns effectively and reacts. He doesn't just come in with a narrative and stick to it. And he can think on his feet. And that's something that shows intelligence. That's very key to showing intelligence. And he also, Putin also says, as regards to personal relationships, I think they're established, the Russian president stated. So, I mean, that's not, going, goo goo gaga over Trump, but it's saying, I think we have a working relationship here. That's exactly where we want these two to be. So then, going back to this article, it says that they talk about Theresa May and how Trump wants to create a very powerful trade deal very, very quickly. Now, that's exactly the message we should be sending the UK. We have a special relationship with the UK. The USA and the UK should stand together very closely. That should be the strongest alliance in the world. And no matter what happens, pretty much, we have to keep building off that relationship. And the UK is in a position of weakness right now, or concern with leaving the EU. And the US can absolutely give the UK the upper hand if we say, we're going to give you this amazing trade deal. That will take away a ton of leverage the EU has against the UK. I mean, if the US said, we might start a trade war with the EU if you don't give the UK a reasonable out, and a reasonable trade deal post Brexit, well, that would give the UK even more leverage. So there's more options we can go to, but of course that's an extreme. So right now, Trump's sending the message not only to the UK, but also the EU, that we're there for the UK. And we're such a strong economy that us alone can do so much for the UK. Then you go on to North Korea. And effectively, it's more of the same on North Korea. But they mainly say that they haven't given up on China yet getting involved. And so they're expecting the main strategy with North Korea right now is to pressure China to pressure North Korea. But I do think we're running out of options with North Korea, and they are coming closer to military action. I really believe that. I was listening to Nikki Haley talk to the UN at the emergency meeting. I did a video on it. South Korea and the USA both said basically this is your last shot, North Korea, to get on the right side of actions, and you better shape up. And it sounded a lot. Trump says he doesn't draw red lines, but it sounded about as close to a red line as you can get without actually saying this is a red line. So I absolutely think that if North Korea shoots off another ballistic missile, especially if it's an ICBM, that we're going to go in and fuck up their shit. But anyways, I will talk to you guys later. That's all I have for now. The G20 Summit seems to have gone very well for Trump, and I think he's gaining a lot of respect the more he talks to these other people. I don't have a video on it. I might post it in the description, but look up Emmanuel Macron, the guy from France. And when I was watching the cable news, they were talking about how he was like forcing his way in the picture down by Trump. And it was really awkward. He went from like one side of the picture all the way down like 4 rows through all these leaders, all the way to the opposite side. Like Trump was on the end in the front and to stand next to Trump. And apparently, what they were saying, I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't been able to check it yet, but they were saying that France and the U.S. are working. Kellyanne Conway was saying this, that they're working on some extremely important things right now that basically transcends, any problems they've had in the past, and that, Emmanuel Macron is realizing that Trump can be a great asset. I actually believe that because France has actually, of the countries who have taken action in countries like Iraq and Syria and stuff, France is one of those countries that has been pretty heavily involved in the Middle East compared to other European countries. So there's actually a lot for the U.S. and France to come together on. Anyways, that's all I've got for you now. Have a good one.